You really should have a podcast. It's great so that way you can have deliberate and consistent networking. You can talk to the people that you should be speaking to, people who may be your clients, maybe your referral sources, maybe your friends. You should have a podcast because if you start a podcast on your own with your own ideas, your own content, that's a great start. You will eventually run out of content. It's a lot more important that you use podcasting as a networking tool to speak with interesting people. So that way you get this FaceTime and that way you have these deeper relationships. I really recommend that you have a 20-minute podcast show, and me and my team at dfypodcast.com can help you. And this is what's called Riverside, where I have all these basically Zoom meetings, recordings with all these people that I've deepened relationships with. And some of them I've known for years, and some of them I know very well. Some of them are new. Some of them I have already been paid from and already done work for. Others, there's some interesting possibilities in the future, but you should have a podcast. So that way your networking is more than just posting on LinkedIn or going to meetings. It actually means something. And I really recommend that you have a 10-minute pre-call where you meet the person first, see if they're serious, a 20-minute podcast interview where you talk about them and their big ideas and their passion and their uniqueness and their stories and then their next step in their offer. And then afterwards, you get them on a post call so that way it can lead to something else interesting, such as maybe you become clients of one or the other, or you become referral sources of one or the other. And let me just walk you through really quickly this process. So here's this guy, Adam W. Barney, I just now got off the Zoom call with, and I was searching for coaches, speakers, authors, podcast guests. I was looking for someone with a LinkedIn profile, with a decent following, such as 5,000 or more, and someone who posts more often than once every 6 months. So that alone is a reason for you to pick up podcasting, because then you will post consistently because you have all these reels from your podcast, and you will have followers on LinkedIn especially because you can have guests on your show. You record episodes, you record clips, you make posts, you tag them, they reshare it, and then that grows your following, and that gets you comments and things like that. So this guy, Adam Barney, he has a great LinkedIn presence. Look at this. He gets 11 comments in 2 hours. He's got 9,000 followers, someone that we want to connect with. So what I did was I said to Mr. Adam, I love connecting with entrepreneurs. Let's connect. He accepted. He didn't send a reply, but we got the notification that he connected. And I said, I love chatting with entrepreneurs. I love stories. Let's do a deeper dive. Let's hear your story. So I gave him this link for what's called my Calendly, and you should definitely have a Calendly link, and it just means that someone can schedule a meeting with you. Now, why do people fail with a Calendly link? They fail because they don't know why they're doing this. They say, oh, well, I'll just have meetings on my calendar and people will just show up and buy from me. No, you have these conversations of who are you warming up and who's warming up you, and you have this conversation to get them on your show, to find out what is their book, what's their website, what's their offer, what's their SaaS, what's their coaching program, whatever. They click on that link. They can choose a date. They can choose a time. They click next. They fill in. And here's what I put as obstacles, roadblocks. Put in their name and email. Why are we meeting? Don't enter NA. What's your speaker bio? And so, because I only want someone on my podcast who has an about bio, right? Someone where I can introduce them. And I say, where is your LinkedIn page? And this might be a little difficultiness on my part, if that's a word. I'm just kind of saying, well, who are you? And I make it easier for me. And then what's the goal of this meeting? And it's to get to know each other, but specifically, it's to have this 5 to 10 minute conversation about them and get me excited to meet with them on a podcast and to get get some ideas of what they're all about. And we almost always come up with something unexpected that we will use on the podcast in the coming days. And so he chose a slot, he registered, and oops, I think for some reason my LinkedIn automation hit him again. That's okay. And then we met, And afterwards, I said, fun conversation. Let's talk on the podcast soon. And there's a link to register the actual podcast. And so now he will be going to this other scheduler, and he'll be choosing a time slot, and he'll be entering first name, last name, email, his bio, and then giving me questions that I should ask him, and then sort of pre-qualifying for my offer, saying, hey, here's my offer. We can start a new podcast or take over the management. He can say, no, not interested. Yes, I have needs. Yes, but I'm undecided, or something else. And then I get him prepared for some of the questions. Definitely not all. We don't want to make this too long, right? This is already like 7 questions. I just say, like, I'll ask what makes you unique, and I'll ask for a powerful quote or lesson. And that's just so that way he's prepared. And even if he just leaves this blank, I don't care about that part. And then how do we meet? That's always good, because sometimes I'm like, who is this person? Why do they register? And if they're like, oh, we met on LinkedIn, or he came from a PR agency, great. And then, do you intend to promote? And so I put a few questions in here, because if they don't answer or they give a weird answer, I can just cancel the meeting. And that's how you should do it too, is you should only be having quality conversations, and you're allowed to set up barriers to entry like this. And if those barriers of entry are too restrictive and don't serve you, of course you should reassess, right? If you're too pretentious, if you end up with no meetings, no podcast episodes, readjust. But if you find yourself on the flip side of that, getting all these just meetings where you're like, I'm so frustrated, why am I doing this? Then it's time to kind of refocus and get the funnel figured out in that way. So then we meet with him, and let me just bring up how the meeting went that we just had. So this is this guy, Adam Barney, and we ran this through a tool called Descript, which is just basically a AI transcriber of videos. And I'm bringing it up that way I can show you how the conversation went. We talked for 10 minutes, and so basically, he's like, I'm used to, and so I guess let me like dissect my own meeting, because I haven't looked at my own process as closely as I want to, and my questions are kind of intuitive. I'd say I've probably done about 100 pre-calls like this, and I've done 1,300 podcast episodes. So now it's time to look at what we're doing right. And I guess I'm looking at this point to see how chatty he is. And this is great, because I just said I wanted to chat with you for 5 minutes to find out what you're all about. And we always end up going like 10 or 15 minutes. They talk my ear off, but I like to say 5 minutes because it's less scary. And sometimes, rarely, it only is 5 minutes if they're like in a hurry. So 5 minutes, right? What are you all about? And he talked about being an energy coach, holistic coaching, battery pack. So what's great about his answer is he talks about the people he helps. And this is a real trap that you might fall into as an author, speaker, coach, is talking all about me, of accomplishments. He did mention his book, but he also does a flip side of who does he help. And then I reflect back, resilience, energy, and I just reflected back like, oh, you do this. Here's my experience with energy coaching, or what I share a little something personal. That way it's not a job interview, right? That way I'm just kind of keeping it casual. So he shared what he's about, and I reflect back a little bit of just personal experience. And then I say, well, I want to share with my platform what has you excited lately. And then that tees him up to share some specific ideas about what he's done. And he talks about being the cheerleader for people. He's got 2 young daughters, 2 dogs. So we're looking for, is he a real person? Does he have personality? How is his conversation? And look at this. It's mostly him talking. Makes it easy on me. And then I do a little complimenting of him because I was impressed by what he said. And then so now we're at the point where now we're 8 minutes in. It's like, all right, time to wrap this up, right? We got to know about him, and there's some ideas in here about like keywords and ideas, and he gave me the 30,000 foot nutshell, and my impression of him is like, this will be an easy podcast episode, right? He talked my ear off, great. I can ask a question, he'll talk for 5 minutes, ask a question, 5 minutes, question will be done. And you do want kind of some equality and some witty banter back and forth, but he is the guest on my show, and what you don't want is having always like pull out all the information. So he'll be a good talker on the show. We know what we're getting ourselves into, and I don't know about you, but when I have an appointment coming up on the calendar soon, sometimes I dread it. Sometimes I say, don't I have better stuff to do, right? Can't I make a sale? Can't I do some client work? Why am I meeting with someone for free? It's easy for your brain to talk yourself out of things. And by doing the pre-call, you're like, if I don't show up to this meeting, if I cancel last minute, I'm letting someone down. He's a real person. And that helps me with the motivation. But it also gets me a little bit excited about what we'll talk about. And it helps my imagination consider the positive outcome of this episode. We'll have some great laughs and great cries, and we'll have a fun content. And then he'll be someone that maybe we can pursue each other sales-wise and networking-wise later, if that makes sense. It's always tricky to talk about that, right? About like, oh, well, I'm pursuing these hot leads, but then you don't want to be too meek either. You see how the chemistry and overlap is. And this guy, Adam in particular, he talked about this idea of collision, which I'm going to make sure to bring that up in what we discussed. Not just regular networking, but collision. And so I love to keep this going. And then somewhere in here, I say, here we go. I can send you a scheduler link after this. You choose a time slot, submit your bio. So it's hard to keep a conversation going for much longer than that. And even if someone keeps talking your ear off, you mention that again, just keep mentioning, hey, after this call, I'll send you the scheduler link to choose a time slot, submit your bio. Because right now, he's not getting anything out of this, right? Sure, he's getting a little bit of sharing about himself, but we're not recording, so I'm not delivering value for him yet, right? We're not recording the podcast yet. So we need to send that link. And what we've done so far in this meeting is got to know him, find out what he's about, feel his personality, and then I just listen a lot and reflect back and compliment, so that way he knows that I will give him a smooth podcast and that I will listen, and we fill out our personalities. And at the end here, I say, do you have any questions for me? And he says, no, it's great to meet you. Great to get some background. And then within here somewhere, I did a little bit of a explanation of what my show is. So here we go. So at the 3-minute mark, I said, so he kind of gave me his elevator pitch and talked about his book and his uniqueness. And I said, and I reflected back, but then before he had a chance to respond, I said, the show is called the Marketer of the Day podcast. I talk to different people, talk about how they put out their ideas, figure out the messaging, the confidence. So that's the mission statement, more or less, of the podcast. Then the format, we go 20 minutes impromptu. I have your book open in a tab. Would love to have you on and share you with my platform about what has you excited. So that's casual enough, right? Saying, I'm here to share with my platform about what has you excited. Who would say no to that kind of thing? And then at the end here, I said, let's keep this conversation going. I'll send that link. And that's what the whole point of this conversation was. So don't lose sight of that. If you're feeling burnt out, stuck, frustrated, directionless, what's the goal of your activity? Well, the goal of this 10-minute podcast pre-call is to feel the chemistry, and at the end, send the link to schedule the actual podcast. That's it. Don't overthink it. Just get the process moving. And then I joked a little bit about the internet being bad right now. And then I'm excited to talk to you. Get that done soon. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday. Did a little bit of a callback. And then, I don't know if it shows very well, but something that I personally do is I'll do a little salute near the end of a Zoom, because how else do you really hang up on a person? And then it's, there we go. There's the salute, right? How else do you hang up on a person? And it makes it kind of awkward on purpose, nerdy, dorky, self-deprecating fun, just to be like, sayonara, see you later. So that's just a thing that I've always done since Zoom began. Do a little salute, and it makes the person laugh, and then you hang up. So that's how we do the podcast pre-call. And then I might do a separate video just explaining how I research a person. But at this point, what I would do is he would schedule the podcast with me. And what I would do right before the call is I would look on he would schedule the meeting. And by the way, let me show you what his meeting looks like. So he filled in that Calendly link, and he put in energy coach, helped hundreds of emerging executive leaders, and then there's his LinkedIn. So even if I didn't have his bio when it came time to do the actual podcast, I'd have his bio, I'd have his LinkedIn open in a tab. He helps with Google Ads, so maybe it's an out-of-date bio. And then we say maximize energy and focus. And then, I know that guy. It's Thomas Helfrich. I've had him as a guest. I pull up his Amazon book, so I know he can talk about the dynamic duo of optimism and autonomy. And then I might even look on his contact info and look at his website, adamwbarney.com, because this is a great way to start a podcast and to end it by having this open and say, hey, Adam W. Barney, he coaches high-performing executives and entrepreneurs to optimize energy, gain clarity, and sustain peak performance without burnout. He's the author of Make Your Own Glass Half Full, The Path to Empowered Optimism and Energy. So if you want to know about the system he's used to help 200-plus leaders optimize their energy, boost productivity, and create lasting success, then sit up and pay very close attention, because this is the most important podcast interview you'll listen to today. And that helps with the AI, transcription, show notes, keyword research, social posting, because I'm reading the words off of his webpage and it's getting into the recording. And then we have our chat and I say, hey, where should we go after someone listens to our podcast? And then he mentions Adam W. Barney, and I say, okay, great. Time to go to adamwbarney.com to discover so much, such as the 4 non-negotiables of energized leadership, goals, feedback, learning, and networking. Most leaders wait until it's too late. Don't be one of them, because energy isn't optional. It's the foundation of high-performance leadership, and without it, growth stalls. So if you are an executive or a founder who wants to scale without burnout, if you're perhaps an ambitious professional who navigates high-pressure roles, or even if you're a leader who knows that you can achieve more but you feel stuck, then you should go right now to adamwbarney.com. That's adamwbarney.com to check out this amazing webpage. Book your leadership energy optimization call with Mr. Adam W. Barney. It's right on there. And thank you, Mr. Adam W. Barney, for showing up, stopping by, and blowing our minds with these ideas about what we need to know about managing our energy, about being great leaders, about scaling without burnout, about taking care of ourselves and our business and our family and our people. People should definitely check out your amazing book, Make Your Own Glass Half Full, The Path to Empowered Optimism and Autonomy by Mr. Adam W. Barney. Go right now to adamwbarney.com to find out more. And thank you very much, Mr. Adam, for showing up, stopping by, and being an amazing guest and telling us what we need to know to move forward and have great success. Click the stop button, stop recording, and then there we go. Now we've had an amazing episode. And one last little thing, which I might talk about in that other video, is if you really want to know a person, search them on YouTube. Search and try to find a 15 or 20-minute video from them. Here's Adam W. Barney right here. You can click subscribe. He's got a 4-minute, a 1-minute. But we try to find him on another show. So here he is, 37-minute show. And what I can do here is I can go to chatgpt.com. While that loads, this YouTube video here of him, we can click on more and click on transcript, show transcript. And it scrolls us back up, and see on the sidebar, there's this transcript here. And we can click and hold down and highlight all of this and right click and copy. And then I have ChatGPT here, and I have what's called a custom GPT called Q&A. And when I paste in this YouTube conversation in this Q&A, here's what it does. Is it says, Distill this YouTube video down into a structured list of question and answers. Questions should be detailed, specific, asked to me. Make sure that we include all questions and answers, no horizontal lines. Keep them in the order they were found in the conversation. Do your best to not pull from outside knowledge. Just use this. Give me the question, some keywords, a title, and then the detailed answer to that question. Now, why all that? Because it makes it a lot more readable. And literally 3 minutes before any podcast conversation, I do exactly this. I find on YouTube a appearance of this person on someone else's podcast. Why a podcast appearance? Because it's what I'm about to jump into. Why YouTube? Because I can grab that transcript and I can click on this, and in just a few seconds, it will give me some interesting questions, like what is an energy coach? They help leaders, emerging and executive, unlock their goals. And if I was super nervous, especially my first few, I might also, once this all generates, I might say like what questions were not asked, or how can I fill in the gaps, or knowing what you know about me, ChatGPT, what do you know about me, Robert Plank? What should I ask him about entrepreneurship or about podcasting? And then if he has some kind of a framework, a system, an acronym, a 5-step, 7-step process, it will be revealed here. For example, the dynamic duo, optimism and autonomy, and then you end up seeming like a smart person. You seem like someone that has either read their book or is on the same wavelength. And no, your secret was you just found where they were on a podcast. You grab the transcript, you put it into this. Toxic optimism ignores reality. Toxic autonomy leads to over responsibility. Ikigai, Odyssey plan, finding meaning in the struggle, leaders, vision, and teams, self-compassion, gratitude, mindfulness, neuroplasticity. So even looking at the keywords, and even just scrolling through and reading these out loud, or having this open in a tab while you talk to him, it just helps to pick up the threads better and to know where to go to latch on to his amazing ideas and to listen better. Because if he's talking about the Odyssey plan, continue current trajectory, pivot to a different path, or explore without constraints, if you're like stressing out trying to remember all three, then you're distracted of what he's saying in the moment. But if you see the 3-step plan before and you say, oh yeah, we talked about that, then you can have a more engaged conversation and be like, I'd like to unpack number 2. Or out of these 3, like which one do you think people struggle with the most? So that's an extra ChatGPT bonus tip, is grab the transcript of this guest's appearance on a different podcast and just tell ChatGPT to break it down into the question and answers that were asked, and to not pull from any outside sources, and to do your best to keep the conversation in the order that the questions and answers were provided. You end up with a really great kick-ass podcast interview where you make the person seem smart because they are, and you seem smart for finding this person because you are. You end up with content, but most importantly with podcasting, you build that relationship. And this is only possible, I believe, if you have a team running your podcast for you. How do you do all this? And then you also have to say, oh, you need to export MP4 files and drag in music and create show notes and process for MP3s. That's a lot of technical stuff. What if you focused on just the prospecting, the marketing, the sales, the high-level strategy, and you left the rest, the grunt work, to me and my team at dfypodcast.com. Robert Plank, run a pre-call. You'll love it. But do it right. Do a little preparation. Have fun with it. Use the pre-call as your way to flesh out the riffraff, to get them liking you, to get you liking them, so that way you're excited to record a kick-ass podcast interview that gives you content, that gives you SEO ranking, that gives you social media materials, that also leads to future prospecting, networking, sales, and referral opportunities for you and these other amazing people that you find on LinkedIn that otherwise you might just be liking and sharing and messaging. Why not turn it into something more substantial? And why not replace what we all lost post-pandemic with all the networking live events? It hasn't quite come back to what it once was. Who knows if it will? Even when you go somewhere in person, people are on their phones or distracted, but you can every day or every week work on a handful of people that you would just have these deeper relationships with, and who knows what it leads to. Well, one way to find out is do it and have your own podcast. Robert Plank, dfypodcast.com. I'll have a link in the description for you to schedule a meeting with me, to go to my website to find out what all the fuss is about with a podcast and why you should have one right now today. Robert Plank, dfypodcast.com. Bye for now.